Amazing transformation. Black CEO exposes hidden truth after being laughed at, cancels $3.8 billion deal. Jordan West stood at the precipice of what could be the crown jewel of his career. The $3.8 billion deal was within reach, yet it felt like shackles tightening around his soul. He stepped into the boardroom, a slick, intimidating space lit by the cold glow of overhead lights, his heart echoing with memories of skepticism from his youth. The polished executives encircled him, their tailored suits standing as barriers between his world and theirs. Then it happened. One of them laughed outright at his proposal, a sound sharp enough to slice through his carefully constructed confidence. Laughter? Really? The wound of humiliation burned, pulling him back to every dead-end job he'd trudged through, to the racially charged encounters he faced, to the late nights poring over textbooks as if they could shield him from this moment. Did they think he didn't belong here? His mind raced, grappling with the echo of that derisive laughter. It was a visceral reminder of every moment when he felt like an imposter. Doubt snaked in, whispering words of inadequacy. Perhaps they were right. Who was he? A black CEO in a sea of seasoned white men. But as the laughter faded, something darker clawed at him. He unearthed a truth within the corporation's past. A tangled web of systemic inequality, shady practices, and exploitation that would wreak havoc on his community. The moral dilemma bulged like a tight fist in his chest. Succumbing to personal success or standing against the Goliath of corporate greed. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously. It makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension twisted in his stomach. Gut-wrenching disappointment battled against ambition. His mother's teachings about integrity rose like a ghost, and his father's lessons about justice screamed in his ear. Were those values merely whispers now, drowned out by the siren call of ambition? As the Atlanta skyline flashed by during his late-night drive, each passing light flickered memories, ones of struggle, of resilience, of feeling different, yet refusing to be defined by it. He was a dreamer fueled by those very same lights, but it felt like he was about to turn off the beam of hope. With trembling fingers, Jordan pulled out his phone, a brutal tug-of-war raging inside him. Ready to draft that manifesto exposing the corporation's wrongdoings, he hovered, hesitating, grappling with the impending sense of loss. Could he forfeit everything he'd clawed for? The uncertainty pressed down on him like the weight of expectation. Just then, his phone buzzed, a chilling notification that made his heart drop. The deal he thought he could walk away from was now intertwined with a terrifying mystery, unraveling in front of him, teasing him with a path to freedom or devastation. The stakes had been elevated, and as he looked out into the dark city, he could almost feel the world holding its breath, waiting for his next move. Jordan clenched the steering wheel as his mind spiraled through a tempest of thoughts. Each tick of the clock on his dashboard pierced into his chest, amplifying the urgency of his decision. What had once seemed like a straightforward path to financial triumph was now muddled with ethical conundrums. He could either betray his core values or step into a treacherous landscape filled with potential damnation and glory. He envisioned the suits laughing as his proposal unraveled before them, their smirks morphing into disdainful sneers. But in that moment he shifted gears. He was not just a CEO, he was a vessel for change. His pulse quickened, racing ahead of his mental deliberation, as the city light flickered against the glass like stars fighting a raging storm. Could he risk everything to challenge a system entrenched in inequality? Arriving home, the comforting embrace of familiar surroundings momentarily lulled him into a sense of safety. He sank into the worn leather of his couch, soaking in silence, a stark contrast to the cacophony of the day's events. The weight of the world pressed down on him, yet instead of feeling crushed, a turbulent resolve began to build. Silence transformed into a canvas for his thoughts. He recalled the faces of the people he'd encountered and served throughout his journey, those who would continue to suffer if he remained silent. That act of defiance, he realized, could be the catalyst for a larger movement, one that opened doors rather than shut them, a revolution fueled by truth surging through the corridors of corporate America. No longer would laughter drown out justice. His voice would rise above it. Untangling his conflicted feelings, he established a connection between his personal journey and the collective struggle of many. Jordan picked up a legal pad, his pen poised over the page, ready to dissect the intricacies of the corporation's practices he had uncovered earlier. Ideas surged forth like a river breaking free from a dam. He would build a case, layer by layer, with each point amalgamating facts, figures, and anecdotes. What began as a manifesto transformed into a declaration of accountability. It was not merely an act of defiance against those who laughed at him, but rather an exploration of his essence, the embodiment of his mother's lessons in integrity and his father's pursuit of justice. Writing late into the night, he felt alive with purpose. Each word he inscribed forced him to confront his own fears of inadequacy. He reflected on the path that led him here: sleepless nights, rejected applications, jobs where his resilience was questioned. Those experiences were not relics of failure, but testaments to his strength, instilling a fierce determination that now burned within him. However, the reality of what he was drafting felt visceral, almost palpable. It dawned on him that this act of unveiling could cost him more than the deal. It could unravel the carefully woven tapestry of his corporate existence. But the alternative, the silence, was far more sinister. No, he would not be a bystander in his own life. He would take control. As dawn crested, illuminating his workspace, Jordan felt emboldened. He was committed to revealing the truth, come what may. He lifted the legal pad, ready to carry his rallying cry to the world. The next step was specific. He would confront the board, challenge their complacency, and expose the injustices. But what awaited him in that boardroom? The time had come to face the shadows of his past and claim his rightful place in the future. All it took was one move now, and the outcome could reshape everything. The question echoed in his mind as he turned off his lamp. Could he handle the risks ahead, or would he fall prey to the very system that sought to silence him? The morning sun streamed through the window, unabated by the storm brewing within Jordan's mind. Each beam felt like a spotlight, zeroing in on his resolve, igniting a fire that had flickered to life during the night. He harnessed that energy, feeling its warmth as he prepared to face his board, an assembly of power players. This calculated confrontation would either be a pivot point for his career or the moment he plunged into uncharted waters without a lifeboat. As he dressed, Jordan spoke to his reflection in the mirror, rehearsing his words. "You've come too far to turn back now." The echoes of his mother's admiration for integrity resounded in his mind, her unwavering belief that honesty is an armor against corruption. But did he possess that same strength? Would courage bloom under the stifling pressure of corporate duopoly? He arrived at the office early, the building looming like a fortress of skepticism around him. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside, the polished floors reflecting the bright lights and, more significantly, the weight of expectation. Each step felt heavy, thick with the dread of the unknown. The board meeting room, with its colossal oak table and monochrome portraits of previous executives, awaited him as an arena for his showdown. Taking a seat at the head of the table, his heart raced. Was it anticipation or trepidation? When the other board members arrived, their polished expressions belied the tension thickening in the air. Jordan noticed the slight furrow on Mr. Walters's brow and the subtle exchanges of glances among the directors. They sensed the shift, but the question remained. Did they understand the gravity of what he was about to unveil? As he initiated the discussion, his voice resonated with unexpected strength. We need to talk about the ethical implications of the practices we bank on. The room stilled. He could almost see the wheels turning in their minds. An undertone of irritation flickered across Mr. Walters's features as he leaned forward, defensive. "This is about numbers, Jordan. We are here to maximize profit, not to play social advocates." Jordan fought the urge to dismiss that argument with frustration. Instead, he countered it with facts. He presented the findings that had consumed his night, standing firm against the tides of indifference that threatened to sweep his resolve away. "But at what cost, Mr. Walters? The shareholders buy into our values as much as our profit margins." Every statistic he presented was a lifeline, an anchor tethering him to the moral high ground. Yet as the discussion unfolded, even his conviction encountered waves of opposition. Each argument from his colleagues felt like a beating against the relentless force of his idealism. When Ms. Tran, the CFO, queried his intention with thinly veiled condescension, Jordan felt his energy wane. "Are you prepared to sacrifice the company's future for fleeting moral pride?" Doubt gnawed at him. Perhaps the risks outweighed the rewards. A chilling thought hung heavily in the air. What if he was wrong? Jordan's hands trembled slightly as he organized his notes, desperately trying to suppress the rising sense of inadequacy. The weight of his truth felt as if it could crush him. But in a moment of clarity, as he looked around the room and locked eyes with his loyal assistant, Emma, a wave of reassurance surged through him. Her determined nod pierced through the fog of doubt, lighting a path he had nearly lost sight of. Summoning courage, Jordan leaned in closer. "If we forsake our integrity, we lose the essence of our company. We become just another entity in the corporate machine, devoid of purpose. Is that the legacy we want to leave?" The room reacted with murmurs, each member shifting uncomfortably as the essence of his challenge settled in. But would this plea for change fall on deaf ears? Could he turn this simmering tension into a call for action? As they began to respond, Jordan felt the tide shift, unsure whether it would be in his favor or not, but resolute that this moment had sparked a fire that could either ignite enlightenment or set him ablaze. As voices rose and arguments intensified, Jordan's heart pounded in sync with his insistent belief in accountability. What was he willing to risk? The stakes had never been higher, and suddenly the sound of rustling papers echoed ominously through the air. The boardroom door swung open quietly, an unexpected presence ready to confront the very foundation of his revolution. Who was it, and what new obstacle would emerge to challenge everything he stood for? The atmosphere in the boardroom shifted, sharp and electric, as all eyes turned to the door. A shadowy figure stood silhouetted against the light, bold and effortless in their intrusion. It was Victoria Ellis, the newly appointed head of compliance, her reputation for unwavering ethics preceding her. Jordan's heart did a skip. While her arrival carried an unexpected weight, it was also a lifeline, someone who had proved time and again that principles could withstand the corporate tide. Victoria strode in with confident grace, her gaze sweeping across the tepid assembly. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she stated, her voice both calm and commanding. Jordan swallowed hard, recognizing her approval could turn the tide, while her skepticism could spell doom for him. "Not at all," he managed to respond, the tremor in his voice belied by his growing resolve. "We were just discussing the ethical practices of the company." Her brow arched with interest, and she strolled closer, taking a position at the head of the table beside him. "Let me hear what you've proposed, Jordan." As he recapped his challenge amidst mixed expressions of disbelief and intrigue from the board members, He felt an ember of hope ignite within himself. Victoria's presence seemed to absorb and magnify his determination, fueling the drive he'd almost extinguished under the pressure of opposition. With each point he championed, he observed her unwavering focus. It felt like he was gaining not only an ally, but a powerful advocate. "Ethics, Jordan, are not merely words on a wall," she interjected thoughtfully. "They are the foundation upon which sturdy companies are built. If we are to thrive in today's world, we must do so with integrity and purpose. Tell me more about how you see our current strategies jeopardizing that." The collective ambiance transformed slightly as Victoria challenged the skeptics around the table. Jordan seized that opportunity. "We rely on profit projections that overlook the long-term consequences of our choices. The world is evolving, and the consumer base is becoming more discerning and socially conscious. Our failure to adapt could threaten not just our market share, but our very trustworthy reputation." As discussions escalated, he began to notice incremental shifts among his colleagues. Mr. Walters narrowed his eyes, frustration leakage giving way to begrudging respect. Ms. Tran, previously resolute in her condescension, mulled over the data presented with a frown, her calculations likely at work, questioning the company's future approaches. With newfound vigor, Jordan pressed on. "Imagine if we pioneered a new sector focused on sustainable practices. We could become leaders, setting standards instead of simply towing the line." As he spoke, Jordan could feel the momentum building, if only just a fraction, within the hearts of those who were listening. Victoria remained an attentive figure beside him, her nods encouraging him to unleash the ideas swirling in his mind. And yes, there will be costs, but the cost of inaction is even greater. By aligning our operational strategies with our stakeholders' values, we can enhance loyalty and drive innovation. Is this not a risk worth taking? The murmurs rose again, yet this time they were tinged with curiosity rather than dismissal. It was as if the room had transformed from a cage of doubt into a crucible of potential change. He could sense it, a chorus of uncertain considerations, conversations igniting into clarity. However, as he prepared to dive deeper into the vision he was painting, he stumbled upon a voice echoing from the corner of the room. Ms. Tran again, her tone sharp and unyielding. "And what happens when the shareholders, the ones who fund our enterprises, turn their backs? Do you propose we mutate our corporate identity on ideals alone?" His pulse quickened. It was a challenge that struck at the very heart of his initial apprehensions. What if shareholders viewed this pivot as a downfall rather than a renaissance? His palms were clammy, and for a moment the depth of his conviction faltered. But just then, Emma's stern yet reassuring gaze found his. It was a reminder of his mission, of why he had initiated this call for change in the first place. With a renewed sense of purpose, Jordan turned to the board, his voice steady. "We need to engage them, educate them. It starts today here with us." Yet just as he felt the tide turning positively, the phone on the table buzzed, indicating an incoming message. Victoria discreetly checked her phone, only to lift her head sharply, her expression shifting from interest to concern. "We need to address this now," she stated, the sudden urgency creating unease in the air. Jordan's anxiety spiked. What could be so important? The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as she passed the device toward him. His eyes widened as he read the words of a corporate backlash brewing just outside the boardroom, the very essence of his revolution hanging in delicate balance. What had he stirred up? And could he maintain the integrity of his newfound momentum against the wave of external turmoil? Would this revelation derail his plea before it even gained traction? Jordan's heart thundered in his chest as he scanned the message on the screen. The headline blared like a siren, foretelling doom, an exposé on the very company he was trying to elevate. He could hardly digest the implications. It would not only sway shareholder opinions, but embolden his detractors within the boardroom. This isn't just a coincidence," he murmured, his voice almost swallowed by the tension in the room. Victoria's eyes narrowed, absorbing the impact of words written in black and white, a reflection of her own struggles. "What do we know?" she demanded, shifting everyone's focus. Without waiting for a response, she took control. "Jordan, can you access further details? We need to assess the validity." His hands fumbled as he opened his laptop, uncovering reports echoing the same concerns he had voiced earlier. They questioned the company's integrity, thundering accusations of unethical practices and unsustainable practices hidden behind smoke and mirrors. He felt the walls closing in, the spotlight exposing him not as a champion, but potentially an accomplice in the corporate sins. "Everyone here needs to take a step back," Victoria said, her voice stronger. "If this information leaks fully, it could derail our credibility. We need a united front. We must confront this head-on." Jordan recognized the urgency behind her command. It signaled a shift in the narrative, a call to arms, not just for himself, but for the entire leadership team. The passion that had surged through him only moments ago was now laced with a bitter edge of fear. He had to weigh his ideals against the very real risk of a tidal wave sweeping away everything he believed in. "What if we don't have a plan?" he retorted, involuntarily raising his voice. "What if those shareholders decide to cut their losses and walk away? All my efforts—" He hesitated, clenching his fists. "I don't want to be known as the man who failed." Victoria regarded him, a knowing look that pierced through his doubts. "We can't allow fear to dictate our actions. What we can do is turn this situation around, leverage it for transparency. If we show that we're willing to confront our flaws openly, that could build stronger trust in our decision-making." Could it really work? He doubted his own ability to effect such change, but Victoria's conviction grounded him. There was strength in vulnerability, one he had to learn to wield. He felt a fire igniting within him, juxtaposed with an unmistakable, icy grip of vulnerability. "We could present our own findings to the shareholders," he suggested, his mind racing while mental gears shifted. "Position ourselves as leaders in ethical practices by revealing our upcoming strategies, and this time follow through." "Exactly," Victoria replied, a hint of approval warming her stern demeanor. "But we need to act fast. All of you," she addressed the room, "make no mistake. This moment can redefine our legacy. We either choose to bury our heads in the sand or rally together to craft a narrative from the ashes of our failures." People around the table exchanged glances laden with mixed emotions, resignation, apprehension, a glimmer of interest reborn within the wide-eyed faces of some younger board members. Jordan could see the flicker of hope, the same ember he dared to nurture growing within himself. But suddenly, Ms. Tran interjected again, sharp as a blade. "If we admit to these wrongdoings, we'll expose ourselves to litigation and further backlash. And meanwhile, I can guarantee you that many will see you, Jordan, not as a hero, but a scapegoat." Her words cut deep, a stark reminder of the very real consequences that lay ahead. He could feel the pressure mounting around him like a vice, but the thought of retreat filled him with dread. "Then we'll present a solution," he countered, steeling his resolve, letting the heated dialogue strengthen his determination. Not just acknowledgement of past failures, but a comprehensive plan to reshape our practices. This could be our moment to evolve, not just confront the backlash, but emerge better for it. As the murmurs of dissent yielded to acceptance, Jordan felt the weight of possibility on his shoulders. He could sense the potential for collaboration, the opportunity for courage to triumph in the face of fear. Victoria leaned closer, intensity emanating from her. She wouldn't let him retreat. Prepare your points, Jordan. You're leading this task force. You need to rally everyone behind truth and transformation. His mind raced with the enormity of the task, but the stakes felt personal now. This wasn't just about his career, it was the embodiment of everything he had tried to advocate for. With the board's future hanging in the balance and increasingly evident external pressures, he couldn't help but wonder, was he truly ready for the fight ahead? Or had he just stepped into a battleground far beyond his control? The time had come to find out. Jordan sat at his desk, the weight of expectation pressing down him. The conference room still buzzed with uncertainty, echoes of dissent resonating in his mind. As the digital clock blinked the minutes away, he fought the chaos swarming his thoughts. Every second counted. Every decision could mean reinvention or disaster. He summoned the latest reports, scrutinizing them minutely. The voices of his colleagues haunted him, Ms. Tran's harsh realism, Victoria's fierce optimism. Two extremes, both valid. He needed to navigate this storm alone, but what did he truly believe? The looming pressure transformed into a tangible force, fueling his desire to act, but clouding his judgment. Jordan opened a fresh document, the screen emblazoned with his vision for the company's recovery. Transparent practices, he typed, pausing, wondering if they could transcend an admission of guilt into a blueprint for change. Perhaps he could advocate for a shift, turn scandals into strengths. But could vulnerability create strength, or would it expose his own insecurities? His hand trembled as he drafted a plan for the task force, articulating his thoughts into a series of bullet points. With every line, the fear receded slightly. He called upon what he had learned during his career, the lessons from failed presentations, the missteps leading to unspoken mistrust, and how to rise after being knocked down. It became clear that he wouldn't just present facts, he'd share a narrative. This challenge was his moment. As he stared at the words materializing, he felt a flicker of confidence. Perhaps he was more prepared than he had thought. His heart raced as an idea flashed across his mind. The presentation wouldn't just reveal their misdeeds, it would offer a roadmap. He envisioned a commitment to not just resolve, but also to reshape their corporate culture, integrity as a foundation. Jordan sprang from his chair, pacing the room as the outline of the presentation crystallized. With each step, the anticipation morphed into resolve. He saw images of the board members' faces, blending skepticism with curiosity, a mix of expectations crisscrossed with hope. Graham, one of the company's veteran leaders, was known for his reluctance to embrace change. The thought of confronting him clouded Jordan's resolve. Confrontation, there was no getting around it. If he wanted to harness the courage bubbling within him, he would need to face Graham directly during the strategy meeting. The presentation loomed ahead. It wasn't just a report, but a declaration of who he aspired to be, an ethical leader, one who could shift paradigms in a flawed corporate landscape. But doubts lingered. What if confrontation didn't yield the resolution he envisioned? Would it come crashing down like so many times before? The fear of standing stark in front of the board and finding himself dismissed clawed at him. Jordan rounded the desk, and his fingertips brushed against a framed photograph, his family. The love and support symbolized in that image propelled him to resolve everything swirling inside. Perhaps transparency, while daunting, was a necessary first step to trust, and trust was the key to the company's revival. With the clock urging him towards decision and action, he opened a fresh document and typed one final clarification. This is a motion towards our rebirth. Importantly, he knew that it would not be merely a business pivot, but a cultural renaissance. As he closed the laptop and took a deep breath, he felt a sense of readiness wash over him, but the gnawing doubt remained, coursing through his veins, igniting fears of the confrontation ahead. Uncertainty plagued him. Would he rise to the occasion or buckle under the weight of truth? It was time to put everything into action, to step into the boardroom with his head held high. The battle he had trained for was no longer conceptual. It was about to unfold in real time. There was no turning back now. The moment had arrived. With focus sharpening and purpose igniting, he glanced at the door. The gravity of the next few moments settled over him. This would either mark the beginning of a new chapter, or it would turn the pages of his career to dust. Facing the unknown, Jordan found a sinking unease settling in his abdomen, yet deep within that uncertainty flickered a burgeoning sense of hope and potential. The outcome was ripe with possibilities just waiting to be realized. The time had come to turn intentions into action. Jordan stepped towards the door, ready to confront his destiny. Where his path would lead, he could only dare to imagine. The boardroom door swung open, revealing a sea of stern faces. Jordan's pulse quickened, each heartbeat echoing louder in the tense silence. He hesitated for a moment, grappling with the impending confrontation. In the shadows of their skepticism loomed Graham's towering presence, his reputation for dismissing radical ideas almost palpable. But today, the stakes weren't just about numbers, they were about principles. Jordan stepped inside, forcing his posture to exude confidence, despite his internally churning doubts. He could feel the weight of their gazes, a blend of incredulity and expectation. Taking a deep breath, he positioned himself at the front of the room, the digital projector casting an illuminating glow that accentuated the contours of his determined expression. The presentation slides flickered to life, displaying key points that reflected both their failings and coveted aspirations. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady yet charged with an edge of defiance. "Today we stand at a crossroads. What we choose to do in this moment will define not just our financial future, but the very culture of our organization." Jordan looked at the board members, locking eyes with Graham, whose disinterest was evident, but today his gaze would not waver. "Transparency is our path forward," he asserted, the words echoing in the charged space. "Admitting past missteps isn't a weakness, it's an opportunity. A chance to rebuild trust." Skepticism flashed in Graham's eyes, and the flicker stung like fire. Jordan braced himself, hoping to harness that critical moment. He navigated through his slides, highlighting scandals, acknowledging mistakes, and presenting a cohesive strategy. With every fact and figure, his confidence grew, inching beyond the trepidation that threatened to anchor him in past failures. Then came the crucial slide, a bold statement on embracing vulnerability. "We need to transform our failures into strengths," he urged, feeling the weight of every syllable. "Our commitment to integrity can reshape our identity. The public expects accountability, and if we meet this moment with transparency, we'll not only regain their trust, but could emerge as a leader in ethical practices." Graham shifted in his seat, tightening his jaw. The silence hung heavy, waiting for a reaction, a rebuttal. The entire board had fallen under his spell, and in this quiet, Jordan felt a tug of certainty, a realization dawning within him. Maybe he was meant for this, changing narratives, embracing conflict, and guiding through turmoil. Suddenly Graham broke the silence, his voice cutting through with his trademark skepticism. "You truly believe that admitting our failures will strengthen our position in the market? Isn't it just an excuse for incompetence?" The direct challenge felt like a punch to the gut, but instead of retreating, Jordan leaned in, fully aware that this was the defining moment. It's not about excuses, it's about evolution. Admitting faults is the first step in demonstrating we can learn and adapt. The market may have laughed at us, but I refuse to let that be our legacy. A ripple of murmurs coursed through the room. For the first time, he felt a shift in energy, an uncertain acceptance of defiance against their old methodologies. The tides were turning in his favor. Jordan knew that this was just the beginning, a small victory against the weight of tradition. His eyes glided over to Victoria, who offered an encouraging nod. That affirmation fueled his momentum. He continued, detailing actionable steps toward a more inclusive culture and outlining how each board member would play a pivotal role in the transformation. The more he spoke, the more he felt the powerful surge of his vision take hold. The corporate ship had been anchored in rigidity for too long, but now the sails were being set for change. As he concluded, he invited questions, ready to face whatever wave came next. The room crackled with anticipation. Each question would test the resolve Jordan had just begun to build. Yet even amid the rising adrenaline, a chilling thought gripped his mind. Would they truly accept this new way forward, or would Graham's stubbornness snuff out the flame before it even ignited? The stark reality hit him. He was no longer just presenting a proposal. He was standing at the forefront of a revolution, prepared to face an uncertain future. As the questions started to flow, so did moments of clarity and self-discovery. What he didn't know was how much he would need to fight, not only to convince them, but to silence the remnants of self-doubt still lurking within. The outcome rested in uncharted waters, and with every exchange, he could either sink or swim under the scrutiny of the very leaders he aspired to inspire. What Jordan didn't yet realize was that this confrontation in the boardroom would lead him to a revelation about his own leadership style, one that could either shatter his perceptions or solidify his newfound identity. As he faced Graham's piercing glare amidst the brewing debate, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge was just about to unfold. Jordan's heart raced as he braced himself for the barrage of questions ahead. Each inquiry had the potential to either reinforce his conviction or unravel the fragile thread of confidence he had built. The first voice emerged from across the table, a seasoned executive with a penchant for the status quo. Jordan, while transparency sounds great in theory, isn't there a risk that our competitors will capitalize on our weaknesses? Isn't it naive to think the market will embrace vulnerability? The question, veiled in skepticism, was a cue for Jordan's internal dialogue to intensify. He could feel the weight of his stance as he methodically crafted his answer. We're not exposing our weaknesses. We're demonstrating our commitment to growth. Our competitors may see us as weak, but we can repurpose this narrative. By embracing transparency, we build a brand rooted in authenticity, which consumers are increasingly prioritizing. Encouraged by the slight nods from some board members, he sensed that he was pushing through, but Graham's expression was still impassive. Jordan instinctively sought to anticipate the inevitable rebuttal, knowing his biggest obstacle was right before him. Authenticity, Graham's voice dripped with sarcasm. Weren't we just caught in a scandal? How do you convince the public that we aren't merely posturing? How do you make them believe we've changed? The air in the room thickened, and for a fleeting moment Jordan felt the ground shift beneath him. The gravity of the past weighed heavily, but amid that pressure, he found resilience. He recalled how far he had come, not just professionally, but personally, as he wrestled with his own insecurities. By creating genuine pathways to accountability, he replied, his voice steady yet charged. We harness our inadequacies as catalysts for transformation. Public trust isn't given. It's earned through unwavering actions. We need to set forth a 5-point plan. 1. A full audit of our operations. 2. Transparent public disclosures. 3. Collaboration with stakeholders. 4. A series of community engagement initiatives. And 5. An internal cultural shift that prioritizes integrity over profit. With each point, he felt the self-doubt that had painted his previous experiences begin to dissipate, replaced by a burgeoning belief in his vision. The board members, though hesitant, were clearly intrigued by the strategic approach. An unexpected voice chimed in, a younger member, someone who had often been overlooked in these settings. "Jordan, I think what you're proposing is revolutionary." His admission lingered in the air, igniting a flicker of hope. "But how do you think the employees will respond to these changes?" Jordan felt a slight tightening in his chest. This was the moment to weave the narrative of inclusivity and accessibility. "Our culture has stifled voices for far too long," he said, locking eyes with the young executive. "We need to engage our workforce, ensure they feel valued and heard. This isn't just about shifting strategies, it's about rebuilding our foundation on a bedrock of trust and courage." With this new energy, he reframed his approach, articulating how each board member could champion this change within their departments. He observed heads begin to nod, unease slowly giving way to cautious optimism. Yet he couldn't ignore the lurking shadows, the lingering sense that Graham was biding his time. Graham finally leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You want to redefine our identity based on a foundation of vulnerability. What if it backfires? What's your backup plan?" Jordan's mind raced. This was more than a challenge. It was an opportunity to showcase the depth of his resolve. Every transformative initiative bears risks, but it's in those risks that we discover who we are. Should we be afraid to become something greater because of uncertainty? If we don't take a leap of faith, we risk stagnation and decline forever. Silence enveloped the room. He felt exposed, yet invigorated. Was there strength in vulnerability? He had managed to connect his vision to their fears, while simultaneously confronting the board's disregard for change. The cold sweat on his brow testified to the intensity of this confrontation. He was fighting not just for acceptance, but for his emerging self. As they moved into further specifics of the proposed plan, Jordan found unexpected resolve rising within him. If he could lead this charge, if he could embrace both the discomfort of conflict and the challenge of change, what might he uncover about himself in the process? The session stretched on, delving deeper into strategy, navigating the minefield of boardroom politics. Yet, in the quiet corners of his mind, another question began to fragment his thoughts. What if his shift towards leadership catalyzed not only a corporate revolution, but personal awakening? A chance to redefine himself entirely. As the conversation shifted again, his gaze met Graham's, a clash of ideologies hanging heavily in the air. Jordan realized this was a battle for more than just the company's future. It was a battle for his own identity, a pivotal moment that could either elevate him as a leader or entrench him in mediocrity. With tension rising, he knew the next steps would be crucial. The real test was still ahead, and amid the faint whispers of dissent and doubt, one thought echoed prominently. The time had come to face not only Graham, but the vestiges of his past self. The board meeting unfolded like a carefully orchestrated play, the stakes rising with every exchange. Jordan's heart thumped rhythmically, coupling with the flurry of thoughts ricocheting in his mind. The approval of his plan felt more like a personal validation than a corporate necessity. He was not merely presenting ideas. He was articulating a vision born from the depths of his struggle. "Jordan," one of the older executives interjected, breaking his reverie. "You speak of accountability, but what does that look like in tangible terms for our workforce?" Each question was a tool to excavate the depth of his convictions, and Jordan welcomed this challenge. Clarity washed over him as he drew from his previous experiences of being overlooked, ignored, and underestimated. He could empathize with the employees who felt voiceless. They needed to see that change could ignite hope. "I propose regular check-ins, feedback loops, and an open forum for employees to voice their concerns directly to leadership. We must ensure that every level of the company understands their worth and how they contribute to our mission," he said, his voice laced with conviction. In the wake of his response, an internal warmth blossomed within him. His mind whirled with the tantalizing prospect of leading a movement grounded in integrity. As the dialogue continued, he felt the confidence he had been fostering within himself solidifying. Each moment of self-doubt began to peel away, revealing the leader he yearned to become. Graham, however, remained a steadfast storm cloud in this gathering of light. But how do you intend to manage dissent? Or worse, the idea that what you're proposing may not be effective? Should we begin with a pilot program? Where's the proof that transparency won't backfire? Jordan felt the weight of Graham's scrutiny, but instead of faltering, he sensed a current of determination surging within him. This was not simply an opportunity to defend his plan, it was a moment to redefine how he saw himself in this space. He would not be merely reactive, he would be proactive, embracing the potential for failure as much as he celebrated success. In every innovative venture, understanding when to pivot is crucial. I'm not suggesting we cast aside our previous strategies without a thought. It's about learning from our missteps and recalibrating. If we are open to feedback, continually assessing our progress and adjusting, we can cultivate resilience in our culture, he declared firmly, locking eyes with Graham. It was a direct challenge and a reflection of his own journey. He had learned from failure and emerged stronger. A subtle shift in the boardroom atmosphere hinted at engagement. Interactions that had once seemed guarded were loosening, nudging toward a willingness to explore ideas outside their comfort zones. Meanwhile, Jordan's pulse quickened. He realized he was not just advocating for change, but embodying it. Each moment spent in this arena was a step toward becoming the leader he had never thought possible. As the discussion pivoted yet again, Jordan felt acutely aware of the precarious balance between risk and reward. The conversation turned toward financial implications, projecting how their choices would affect stock prices and public perception. A familiar unease nestled deep in his gut as the ghost of market pressures hauntingly whispered doubts. "What if this initiative drives clients away?" queried another executive, eyes fixated on the figures projected before him. "What if it costs us clients' reputation, profit?" Jordan took a moment to digest the question, reveling in the tension that hung in the air. "What if it does the opposite?" he countered, grounding his retort in his personal experience. "Our human capital is our greatest asset. When we prioritize transparency, we may lose short-term profits, but we gain long-term loyalty, trust, and resilience. This is a marathon, not a sprint." As they moved toward concluding the session, Jordan marveled at how far he had come since he first stepped into this role. He was not just a participant, he was shaping the path ahead. But amid his growing confidence, a flicker of doubt began to worm its way back into his thoughts. Would this commitment to vulnerability truly lead to a rewarding transformation, or would it ultimately unravel him? With a cautious hope igniting in his chest, he felt the winds of change gusting through the meeting, but now a sense of urgency accompanied them. He had ignited a spark, yet the next moment might either elevate him further or plunge him into chaos. The real battle loomed ahead, demanding not only a strategy, but also a belief in himself that he had yet to solidify. Unbeknownst to him, this unfolding saga was not merely about corporate strategy, it was about his reconciliation with the ghosts of his past. As he looked around the room, grappling with this weighty truth, he found himself questioning, could embracing my vulnerabilities lay the groundwork for emerging stronger than ever? Jordan West arose as he stood before the boardroom again, this time feeling the resolute echoes of his recent struggles turn to solid confidence. The intense dialogue from the previous meeting had pushed him into an uncharted realm, one where he could grasp the reins of change instead of letting tradition dictate the terms. Today wasn't merely about corporate strategy, it was a confirmation of his evolution, an embrace of the authority he had wrestled for, and a chance to prove to himself that he was more than an imposter. The projector cast a vibrant outline of his proposed ethical framework onto the wall, but this time it was not just a set of slides. It exemplified his transformational journey. His presence resonated with the authority of someone ready to claim not just a place at the table, but also to influence its direction. "Today, we navigate the implications of our last discussion," he began, his voice unwavering. "The landscape has shifted, and we find ourselves at a crossroads where our operational integrity stands at stake." The atmosphere hummed with a mixture of trepidation and curiosity, and he reveled in it. Unlike previous encounters, he had not come just to plead for change, but to demonstrate that embracing vulnerability forged a path to greater strength. He wanted them to recognize that their reluctance to adapt had shackled their potential, and he was determined to break those chains. With paramount clarity, he moved through the presentation, each point delivered with growing conviction. We can pivot our business model to prioritize ethical practices while simultaneously focusing on profit. Through transparent processes, we foster genuine relationships with our stakeholders and reignite the public's trust. As he spoke, he made eye contact with each board member, inviting them to internalize his message. The tension transformed from apprehension to engagement, and he could feel their walls gradually coming down. This was no longer a one-sided discourse. It had the potential to develop into a collaborative framework that would lead the company into a new era. Graham leaned forward, his previously skeptical demeanor shifting minutely. "This approach certainly addresses the ethical implications, Jordan. But what's your timeline for implementation, and how do you plan to scale it? Stakeholders don't wait for lengthy discussions. They want results." Jordan recognized the challenge and seized the opportunity to dig deeper into his preparations. "We will implement a phased strategy," he outlined, bolstered by data analysis from the previous audits, starting with localized community engagements documented monthly for a quarter. This will culminate in a transparent reporting structure that stakeholders can monitor and evaluate. Demonstrating progress will build confidence and mitigate risks. At that moment, Jordan realized he had not only crafted a resilient professional approach, but had emerged into his true self. He was grounded in authenticity, no longer shackled by doubts, but elevated by them. While the doubts had served as flames of his past, conflating doubt with strength was a newfound skill. He remembered each late night and calloused rejection, not as hindrances, but as stepping stones to this very moment. His confidence surged with each nod from the board, a tangible sign of acceptance he once yearned for. They were beginning to see value in the fearlessness he embodied, his willingness to venture beyond comfort zones. "I also propose regular strategy sessions, not merely to assess outcomes, but to cultivate a culture of shared ownership in this journey," he concluded. "This isn't just a corporate initiative, it's an invitation to redefine who we are. Together, we'll transform our identity." As questions arose, not from a place of skepticism but genuine inquiry, Jordan could sense the shift had occurred. The facade of resistance was fracturing, revealing fragile but burgeoning enthusiasm for the unknown ahead. At that moment, where possibility mingled with responsibility, Jordan's heart swelled with a sharp understanding. He was ready to embrace this transformation fully, not simply as a mantelpiece figure, but as a cornerstone of a movement whose foundation lay in authenticity and ethical action. With the room's energy electric, Jordan solidified his vision, preparing to face challenges head-on with the wisdom he'd amassed. He now viewed every interaction not as a hurdle, but as an opportunity for collaboration, a way to inspire those around him. Before long, the meeting concluded with tangible agreement. The board voted to approve the ethical framework, marking the inception of a movement intended to inspire change beyond their walls. They applauded Jordan, recognizing the depth of his courage to challenge conventional paths. In that unity, there was a promise of renewed purpose, a collective commitment to integrity and accountability. Stepping out of the boardroom that day, Jordan felt a profound serenity settle within him. He was not the same man who once felt alienated amidst the glimmering world of corporate ceilings. He had conquered more than just a professional milestone. He had dismantled the chains of doubt that once bound him, transforming them into powerful guiding forces. Today wasn't merely a victory. It was the dawn of a new era, one where Jordan fully embraced his identity as a leader, carving a legacy built on strength and integrity. He had proven to himself and to the world that authenticity was indeed the most powerful conduit for change. Now it's your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel by taking these actions now. True fans of personal overcoming stories make their voices heard.